All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gut Check series. Today is day one. We are so happy to have you here. And I am so excited to be joined by a dear friend of mine and one of the true experts when it comes to this topic, gut health, Dr. William Li. Before we jump in, before I introduce you to Dr. Li, let me just first introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Dr. Will Bolsowitz. I am a practicing gastroenterologist in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm also an author. I wrote a book called Fiber Fueled, which you can see right here. And that was a New York Times bestselling book. I'm very proud of that book. And I also happen to be a member of the scientific advisory board for ZOE, which is a personalized nutrition company that we are going to be talking about during the next half hour or so when we dig into some of the things with gut health. Because what's exciting is that a lot of what we are learning right now about the connections between us, our unique biology, our food, our gut microbiome, and our health, what we're learning is from ZOE. So with that in mind, I first want to introduce you all to my dear friend, a living legend. I would honestly say a rock star. I don't know if he would allow me to say that, but his name is Dr. William Li. And Dr. Li is a world-renowned physician. He is considered literally the world's expert on the topic of angiogenesis, but he is also considered to be an extreme content expert when it comes to the microbiome, the gut microbiome. He's a research scientist. He's been published in the most prestigious medical journals. He just had a recent publication in the New England Journal of Medicine. He too is also an author. He wrote a book, Eat to Beat Disease. If you haven't purchased this book, you're going to want to grab it. This is a phenomenal book. It was a New York Times best-selling book. People absolutely love it. And Dr. Li is also the founder of the Angiogenesis Foundation, the CEO, and their medical director. So with that in mind, Dr. Li, it is a pleasure to welcome you, and I'm excited to talk to you.
Well, Dr. Bolsowitz, and since we're both Wills, you could be Dr. B and I could be Dr. Li, but we've known each other, and it is so great to see you and to do something together with you. I think that's going to help be of interest and really hopefully be helpful to anybody who's watching this. So I'm glad we could actually kick off this program together.
100%. I'm excited. And, that's kind of cool because you and I, we know each other very well. We talk on the phone all the time. Perhaps we'll get into that a little bit as we talk more about the microbiome. But today, the Gut Check series, we're kicking this off and we're here to talk about the gut microbiome. So let's just go ahead and let's take it from the top. Dr. Li, if you could kind of walk us through what is the gut microbiome?
Well, most people have heard this term gut health or microbiome or gut microbiome. And I want to sort of maybe start from the beginning, which is, when you and I were in medical school, we were taught that bacteria are bad. And yet that we also knew that in the gut, there were some good bacteria, because if we gave antibiotics and we wiped out the good bacteria, our patients really had a big problem because they wound up sometimes in the ICU with gut problems that we'd have to fix with, guess what, more antibiotics, right? So I think you and I came out of this era where we believed fundamentally that bacteria needed to be squashed, and that's all changed now. I think that textbook has literally been thrown out the window, and we now know that bacteria are mostly good. There are some bad guys, but mostly good guys. And a lot of those good guys live in our gut. And that's what we call the gut microbiome. So the term microbiome, it sounds fancy, but it really refers to an ecosystem. I sort of tell people the gut microbiome was like the Great Barrier Reef, off the coast of Australia. It's this amazing system of different animals, flora and fauna that all live together. And at its best, it's a really healthy living system that takes care of itself and it takes care of the planet. And that's basically what's actually happening inside our gut. Now, a lot of it's in our colon, but it's not just in our colon. Our gut really starts from our mouth, from our lips all the way down to the anus. And there's bacteria all along that space. And not just in the gut, our microbiome, to be accurate, also is on the skin, also is in our nasal passages and our ears, vaginal openings, urethra. There's anywhere that bacteria can get in, they're setting up shop there. But we talk about the gut microbiome because it is so important. We feed them with the food that we eat, and how we feed them, how we take care of our microbiome, and can make the difference between health and disease, frankly, life and death.
100%. And, all food that goes in our mouth ultimately passes through this area and comes into contact with these 38 or 39 trillion microbes, which is an overwhelming number. I mean, it's really hard to put into some sort of conceptual framework what 38 or 39 trillion is, but what it would be is if you were to take all the stars in the sky, take them all and just bunch them up and put them inside of you, you would need 100 galaxies full of stars to equal the number of microbes that live inside of you, literally right now. Every single one of you who are here with us today, this is what you have living inside you. And it is a life force, and it contributes to the greater good, the whole person. And when we talk about, you mentioned, for example, Dr. Lee, the Great Barrier Reef. And some people, when we think of ecosystems, they might also insert the Amazon rainforest. And you hear these things that are happening to the Amazon rainforest recently in the last few years. The Amazon is burning. And they say, that's Mother Earth's lungs, right? And the reason why is because it's not just the bugs and the snakes and the animals down on the ground. They form the ecosystem. That ecosystem contributes to a greater whole, which is the ecosystem, the Amazon rainforest. And then the Amazon rainforest is a large contributor to the health of the entire global planet. Any thoughts or anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that these are just really powerful examples of what's happening inside us and why we need to take care of, these critters. And so one of the questions is, how do we even get our bacteria, right? I mean, it actually starts when we're still growing up, or we're still developing in our mom's womb. It turns out that healthy bacteria that live in mom actually somehow make their way through the uterus and actually start to populate the developing fetus even before we get to 9 months. I mean, there's healthy bacteria setting up shop, getting ready to do their job. And when we're born, every aspect of the birth process helps the baby encounter bacteria that, kind of crawls onto it, kind of like when you get to the beach and you want to set up your blanket and your umbrella. That's basically what's happening when you're coming out of the womb. You crawl up for that skin contact. You get the baby gets their first mouthful of milk. The lips are wrapped around the nipple. The skin microbiome gets right into the mouth, and there's mom's bacteria. Something really amazing that people don't realize is that around 9 months or so, when the mom's body, this ecosystem knows that the baby's about to be born, gut bacteria actually text message cells called neutrophils, and they and these cells swing by and pick them up in the colon and give them a ride to the mom's breast, where they get dropped off like an Uber, and they wait there for that first suckle from the baby. And then once the baby suckles them, mom's good gut bacteria gets down into the baby's gut. So this is, not a made up process. This is really who we are. And 39 trillion bacteria, the galaxies, we only have maybe 39 or 40 trillion cells. So we are 50-50 human versus bacteria. There's a term that I write about in my book, Eat to Beat Disease, that's called holobionte. And a holobionte is an organism that's actually made up of different organisms. And that's what we are. We're not really even truly human anymore. We're actually walking around as holobionts. So, if half of what we said is sort of mind blowing to people watching this, what's even more profound is really these bacteria don't just help us digest. They contribute to our digestion and our food and how we actually extract nutrients, but they communicate with our brain. They communicate with our other endocrine organs. They communicate with our skin for wound healing, and even our hair. They can control our mood, and so literally, our gut bacteria are pay us back for the room and board that we give them. So we have to take good care of them.
Yeah, there are so many examples where nature has demonstrated to us how critically important these bacteria actually are to us. And you started to touch on some of this, that there's this connection that exists between mom, the microbes, and the baby that actually is critically important to the development of children. And so you mentioned the changes that occur and how that can connect to breast milk. I'll unpack that just a little bit more if it's okay.
Hmm.
During the third trimester, a woman's vaginal flora, because the vagina has its own microbiome, a woman's vaginal flora actually starts to shift as she gets late into the third trimester and starts to more closely resemble the gut microbiome that you will find inside her, or the microbiome that you will find inside her gut. So it's less like a vaginal microbiome and more like a gut microbiome in preparation for the baby to then pass through the birth canal and get exposed to the greatest probiotic of their lifetime, which is passing through the birth canal. And then another one that I find to be extremely fascinating and honestly just mind blowing is that if you were to examine breast milk, the reason that there's such a tremendous difference between mom's breast milk and what you can get in a formula and feed to a baby, the reason why if you formula feed a baby, they are more likely to be obese, to have allergic illnesses, autoimmune issues, diabetes. The reason why this happens is because mom's breast milk is not just macronutrients. Mom's breast milk contains something called human milk oligosaccharides, which, in a very interesting spin, have zero nutritional benefit to the child in terms of direct nutritional benefit. But there are over 200 varieties of these human milk oligosaccharides in mom's breast milk that are exclusively there to feed the new developing gut microbiome. And so it's just so interesting to think about this. And you started to touch on some of the key points of where there's connections, how our microbes are connected to digestion, access to nutrients, our metabolism, our immune system, our mood, our cognition, the way that we think, even the expression of our genetics. You mentioned that, if you were to look at the number of cells, we are less than 50% human when it comes to the total number of our cells. And if you were to look at our genetic code, we are less than 1% human when it comes to our genetic code. Anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the message that we're both we've understood that's kind of changed certainly my mind, and I'd be interested in hearing, what were the big surprises for you as you've went through your uh, career and education, and kind of, we are all we're practicing medicine and helping people in an era where the very nature of understanding what makes us human and what keeps us healthy is actually changing. So this is kind of we're just about to get into this golden age of the microbiome. I'll tell you quickly something that surprised me. I did some research looking at one bacteria, and the key thing about the microbiome, it's not one bacteria, but it's about the balance in the ecosystem. So it's not about one fish in the Great Barrier Reef or one bug in the Amazon rainforest. It's about how they actually cooperate and collaborate together. You want the species to be in healthy coexistence. But as a researcher, one of the things that I do, you start by research by having hypotheses and studying things one thing at a time. So we were looking at lactobacillus, which is one kind of grouping of healthy bacteria for the most part, and we found quite amazingly that the connections between the gut and the skin were profound. So we actually did a study for wound healing. So when you cut yourself, you got blood vessels that got to grow, and then the scab forms, and the blood vessels actually nourish the tissue underneath, and your cells heal. Your body heals itself, and the scab falls off, and you've got normal skin. And we used to think that, well, if you're a healthy person, your body is healing as fast as it can heal. Anyway, that's what all the surgeons used to believe. We found that if you actually uh, restore lactobacillus, this one bacteria, to contribute to the healthier gut flora, that you can actually double the rate of normal wound healing. So you can be like the
Wow.
Wolverine in the X-Men. You can actually speed up a wound to heal faster than you could possibly believe. And so, we're even our human tissues are not functioning at full capacity. Our bacterial cells can actually help push things along. To me, that was a mind-blowing thing. The other thing that I learned, the same bacteria could influence skin and hair luster and kind of shine as well, the sheen and coloration of our skin. So, when they say is beauty is more than skin deep, well, the skin deep beauty actually is much, much deeper because it actually starts in our gut as well. So those are a couple of things that really surprised me over the years, and why it's so important I pay attention to my microbiome. What about you? What are some of the surprises you've encountered?
I'm blown away all the time. I'm blown away by the science that we've been reading about. I mean, honestly, things that we learned 10 years ago that, for example, that you could transplant the gut microbiome microbes from a human into a mouse model, and that mouse will take on the weight profile of the human that sent their microbiome over. So in other words, if you take the microbiome of an obese person and you put it into a mouse, that mouse will become obese. If you take the microbiome of a skinny human and put it into a mouse, that mouse will become skinny, even if you feed them the same number of calories.
Right.
And so that to me was mind blowing. But I think that the other thing too is looking at bio-individuality and the role that the microbiome plays, where it becomes clear, very clear, that we are not merely the manifestation of the genetic code that we received from our parents. And that is empowering. It is empowering to know that I am not born with some genetic code that basically predetermines what my life and my health is going to be. We actually have the power. And so when you look at some of the research that has emerged actually in the last a little over a year from ZOE, from the researchers from the ZOE Scientific Advisory Board, they showed, looking at 1,000 individuals, that if you know their microbiome, you can predict more powerfully what their blood glucose levels, what their blood lipid levels are going to be, what their C-peptide or insulin levels are going to be. You can predict that in a very powerful way using information like a person's gut microbiome. And the beauty of that is that the gut microbiome is adaptable. With that in mind, the gut microbiome is adaptable, and it is adaptable to many different things. I would argue that food is perhaps the most important thing in terms of adapting and changing our microbiome. You wrote a book, Eat to Beat Disease, about the connection between food and our microbes. Perhaps you would like to talk to us about some of the foods that you think are beneficial.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the simple way of thinking about it. When we have dinner, a plate of food in front of us, and we eat it, some of that food is nourishing us, our human selves. The thing that you'd expect, the macronutrients and the micronutrients, but our human bodies don't absorb everything. And again, back in the Stone Age, when you and I were studying medicine, at sort of in a traditional way, we were told that anything that the human body doesn't absorb just flies out of our gut and we flush it down the toilet. But
Right.
actually, the story has so evolved. Whatever our human body doesn't absorb actually goes down to feed the gut bacteria, and those and things that the gut bacteria love to feed on to digest. Prebiotic foods; these are bioactives found in plant-based foods primarily. Fiber, and they literally have they sit down and have their dinner pretty much after we have ours. And the key thing is that when we feed our gut bacteria healthy foods, they're well nourished and they can do their job. And one of the things that they do is they create their own metabolites, like these things called short chain fatty acids, that then get into our bloodstream, and they do all these other incredible things, like in our brain, in our skin, in our kidney, in our blood. They literally help to they send signals out that help our body function better. But I want to also point out one thing. because you and I always talk about healthy eating, but I think equally important to know is that when it comes to food and health, it's not just about the food, and it's about how our body responds to what we put inside it, and our bacteria is part of that response. So if you actually put something bad in your body or harmful, maybe the human body, pretty resilient, a little bit of this or a little bit of that, we're not gonna, we're not gonna go belly up. But our gut bacteria might go belly up, and that's really what causes dysbiosis. We start feeding, too much sugar, artificial preservatives, artificial sweeteners, all kinds of chemicals that we get kind of just chuck into our body. And until recently, we thought, maybe it's okay. But now we know it's not okay, not just for the human side of things. That's where a lot of biohackers talk about all the things. But I think from the bacteria side, if we start to poison our bacteria, it allows more, the good guy bacteria tend to wane, and it allows the bad actors to kind of take over. So I always talk, it's like a neighborhood where the good neighbors actually are not doing so well. They lose their jobs, they got to leave, they move out of the neighborhood, and more of the criminal element comes in. And when you've got enough of those people around, it becomes chaos. And that chaotic bacteria, I mean, this is something that I think, you there's like right in your wheelhouse. A lot of times that's what brings people to the gastroenterologist, isn't it?
Yeah, that is. That's how I spend my time is, talking to people walking in with complex digestive issues, irritable bowel syndrome, acid reflux, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, celiac disease. I could go down the line, I could keep going. Every single one of these conditions has been associated with damage to the gut microbiome in the way that you're describing, which is dysbiosis. By the way, I love the analogy of, a healthy community versus a community that is in duress and being overrun with crime, because that kind of does paint the picture so that people can imagine what is actually happening inside your body as this is going on. And Dr. Lee, these people who come to see me, and many times they will ask, hey doc, should I have a test to determine whether or not I have dysbiosis? And I look at these people and they have irritable bowel syndrome or, whatever digestive issue, but then they also have migraine headaches, anxiety. They have, many times they're overweight. They may have autoimmune issues or allergic type issues. And what you see is this pattern. You see this pattern where there is this common thread that exists, where at the root of their problem is digestive health, the gut microbiome. And disruption of the gut microbiome, dysbiosis, leads to downstream effects that will not only affect your digestion, but will also affect your immune system, your metabolism, your hormones, your mood, your focus. And it has systemic, far-reaching effects.
And
So
these are the people that wind up coming to you because they're not feeling well and they haven't been able to solve their problems. And what you just said is so powerful, because it means that, I mean, how many times have we heard from someone who says, like, I got this problem, I know it's real, my life is ruined because of it. I can't do the things that I want to do, and yet the doctor doesn't have any answer. They can't find out what's going on. And what we're talking about is a new realization that this is a path we got to explore. And it may not be the only problem, but it is certainly part of the problem. And this idea of connecting the gut to the mind, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, Huntington's disease, depression, schizophrenia connected to the microbiome. I mean, like if you have multiple personalities, I mean, think about how many personalities are in our gut that, like it's just it can explode your mind to think about how powerful this. So, but people listening and watching this probably want to get some practical ideas. And, I was thinking, it would be good for you and I to just share with people some practical things they can actually do. So are there, as a gastroenterologist, I mean, what are like the top 3 or 5 things? Like, what are some useful things that everybody should be doing to help them keep their gut microbiome healthy?
well, I think where I would start. So I like this. I like this. Let's. How about we'll go? I'll share a couple. You share a couple, and then we can go from there. So, um, I think it's important for people to understand that your dietary choices, as we've been alluding to, are directly connected to your gut microbes. And this was shown in a very compelling way in a paper that was published by Sarah Berry, who, by the way, if you're tuning into the Gut Check series, you will be meeting Sarah Berry, okay? And Sarah Berry published this paper in Nature Medicine in January 2021, which showed convincingly, using the information from the ZOE dataset, dietary choices determine gut microbes determine metabolism, determine results, right? So what sort of dietary pattern is the optimal pattern for a healthy gut microbiome? And from my perspective, there is one core principle that I am pounding the drum on, and I want everyone to know, and I don't care what dietary pattern you follow. The assumption is that you eat at least some plants, at least some fruits, vegetables, whole grains, seeds, nuts, and legumes. And I am imploring you today to make diversity of plants a foundational idea within your dietary pattern. So what I mean by that is don't eat the same foods every single day. Stop counting grams of fiber. Start counting the varieties of plants in your diet. Get as many different fruits, vegetables, whole grains, seeds, nuts, and legumes as you can. And yes, I would encourage you to be getting most of your calories from plants. But at the end of the day, we want variety. What would you add, Will?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that that's a gift to be able to actually look at abundance as sort of you've just given permission for people to go out and enjoy abundance, not in terms of the volume you eat, but more a different kind of abundance, which you can pick and choose lots of different kinds of things. And obviously, leafy greens actually have a lot of great fiber. Find ways to actually make the fiber resonate. It doesn't. You don't have to be a rabbit and eat rabbit food all the time.
Right.
Sauteed olive oil actually has also been shown to be beneficial for the gut microbiome. And so you want to swap out things like butter or margarine or some of these other things that the gut microbiome might not like so much with olive oil, which actually it loves. The bacteria loves that. So, but not
Right.
too much. So again, I would say diversity. Prepare your foods, mix them together. Bacteria love that. And by the way, another so amazing things that have been found from a correlative perspective is that it's not just fiber. I encourage people to look at the foods that they really enjoy, that are plant-based, that are healthy, and then take that extra step. Anybody can do this on the internet, and just to find out, like, that food that I really like for me, I really love mushrooms. Look up how much fiber's in there, okay, and look at what kind of fiber's in there. Learn something about your food, because the more we understand what we're eating, this is something that I think people in Europe and Asia do a really great job on. Now,
Yeah.
they care about their food. They want to learn more about their food. They want to talk about their food. So this is actually not eating to live, like sustenance, but this is living to eat, so that we understand what it is that the material we're actually dealing with. If you're in finance and you're spending all your time counting your shekels, I mean, like, it's just something that you get absorbed by. And I think this is something that is changing now. We're seeing more and more people interested in making good choices. So what I would say is look up how the foods that you love can help your microbiome.
I love that. And one of the things that you're alluding to right now that I want to have you expand even further on briefly is what I'm hearing from you is that we have a relationship with our food. This is not just being mechanical about this. This is not being an engineer and writing down what you're eating and meeting certain measures and marks. You deserve to enjoy what you eat. You deserve to love your food. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about love your food, love your health? What does that mean?
Yeah, well, you know what? I did a gap year before I went to medical school, and I moved over to the Mediterranean. I lived in Italy, and then I moved over to Greece, and I lived in Greece, and I cooked. I was very interested in, almost obsessed with kind of learning what food meant to the people who live there, where it comes from, how does it actually play a role in their life, and everybody loved their food. And they also cared a lot about their health. And there wasn't this sort of like, eh, the stuff I love isn't good for me. So if I want to be healthy, I got to cut out all the stuff I love. No, no. I mean, in these old cultures, traditional diets, they actually said, I love to eat this and I'll eat it for the whole life, my whole life. And it actually makes me feel good as well. And there are these incredible culinary traditions that kind of go along with it. And to your point about how everyone is individualized, sort of this bio individualization. Well, this is this is the bedrock of how we understand how to take care of people now. There's no cookie cutter. Everybody's the same. Even in sort of the medical field where you write prescriptions, we're beginning to realize we shouldn't be writing the same prescriptions to everybody all the time. We have to tailor it, personalize it. And to some extent, food as medicine is one of the most bespoke ways to tailor how to take care of your own body in the ways you want. So, fruits and vegetables, plant-based foods, nuts and legumes. By the way, nuts are one of the easiest sources, tree nuts, of protein and fiber and healthy fats that you can actually have as a snack. You don't have to prepare it. Like most of the time, you can just go out to a Costco and buy a bunch of it and have it around. Those are great ways to actually individualize. You get to choose. The power is in the hands of the person who's going to be making that food choice. So I think that like you should know yourself first. Understand what you really enjoy, and of what the things you enjoy, the things that are actually healthy for you. That's the bullseye. And so if you can start with eating the healthy foods that you already love, you're way ahead of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that I think about as an author is that you and I, here's your book, Eat to Beat Disease. This is a masterful book. And you and I, we paint a picture in our books about what is the path forward in terms of optimal human health. But at the end of the day, you and I would both agree that on an individual basis, every single one of us, if we're reading Eat to Beat Disease or reading Fiber Fueled, I expect every single person who reads my book to take these general rules and apply them to themselves in a way that fits their unique needs, their unique biology, and makes them feel great. That's what I want for everyone who reads my book. That's what I want for people who are listening to this conversation. And I think that, one of the challenges that exists is that our current research techniques are designed to give us the big picture, right? We understand the general principles of biology and what is the optimal way to eat. But it doesn't allow us to zoom in on that individual person who is listening to us here today and say, hey, for you, this is actually the best for you, though. This is the exact way to go for you. And that's what I'm excited about with the future of nutrition, which is coming from, the work that's being done with ZOE, where I'm on the scientific advisory board. Because for the first time, we are creating the tools. And by the way, this is a communal process. All right. We are all contributing to allowing this to happen. And by all of us chipping together, being a part of this citizen science project, we can start to understand and disentangle the unique nature of every single one of our unique biology to know what are the best foods for each of us on an individual basis. What are your thoughts as an author and as a scientist with regard to all of these types of ideas?
Yeah, I mean, this is what you're talking about is so so spot on in terms of what's exciting today, what's important today. One of the things I do, by the way, is I'm involved with not only cancer research, but I'm involved with cancer patients. And there are some amazing breakthroughs for cancer treatment. But to speak to how every individual is different, we all know somebody who, could be a friend or a family member or a coworker or a neighbor, somebody who had cancer and didn't do very well, no matter what the treatments were, regardless of what medical center they went to. And then we also know other people who might have had a really bad cancer and somehow they bounced out of it. They're just fine. And the question that I always want to know is like, what makes the difference between somebody who did really well versus somebody who didn't do well? And my colleague, Dr. Laurent Zitvogel in Paris, actually studied 200 patients who were getting immune therapies that allow the body to fight cancer by itself, and found that the difference between people who responded to their own immune system versus people who didn't respond well and got sicker, and a lot of them died, responders versus non-responders, came down to their individual microbiome. And if they had the right kind of pattern of the microbiome, they responded beautifully to this treatment. So it's not just food and general gut health. It's really food and the whole medical premise altogether. And this is probably not only true for cancer treatments, it's probably true for heart treatments, probably true for
100%.
emotional, psychiatric, psychological treatments as well. And so I think this idea that we need to all contribute to understanding who we are, why we are, and how we can be. That's really what ZOE is trying to do. That's the work that you're doing on the scientific advisory board. That's why we're having these conversations to share with people what's actually happening at the forefront of medicine. And for those of us who are privileged enough to be working in that space, this is not something you have to wait for another 10 years. This is stuff that's happening now that you can actually make decisions on, like right here, right now, tonight, your next meal, the next time you put something in your mouth, just think about like what it is that you're doing for the inside of you, and then ask the question, how can you find out more? And that's actually what this program is all about.
I love that. Yeah, and it's so well represented, and it's one of the things that I love is that this is a collective effort, right? This is not scientists sitting up on high in their ivory tower and saying, "Oh, do this, do that." No, no, no. This is us collectively as humans. We're banding together, and there are some scientists who are crunching the numbers. There's statisticians, and then there's those of us that are contributing. We're contributing to making this possible. And so every person who participates in ZOE, you are a contributor to this science. You are empowering and enabling this, and it's going to help other people, and it may help you too. And that's a beautiful and powerful thing. Before we go real quick, I want to tell a brief story since I have you here. This is the first time that we've actually done an interview live together. And so I just want to share with everyone, when my book, Fiber Fueled, made the New York Times, it was a little over a year ago. It was in May of 2020. And I found out on Wednesday night. So authors find out on Wednesday night whether or not they made the list. And the first person to call me was this man right here, Dr. William Li. He was the first person to call me. We talked for 2 hours that night. And we spoke about what it means to be fortunate and blessed with the opportunities that we are as authors, to have people to read our books and care about what we say, and then to have the opportunity to apply our talents in the future to wherever it is that we see an opportunity to try to help and do good. At the end of the day, he and I, we're both medical doctors. We care about helping people. This is our life work. And so one of the things that Dr. Li said to me that night when we were on the phone was, he said to me, now that you're a New York Times bestselling author, you need to find your North Star. You need to decide where you want to go with your career, and don't let anything distract you from getting to the North Star. And as I sat there and I thought about what I wanted to do, I knew that there was a gap in the knowledge on personalized nutrition. I knew that there was so much more that we didn't know on how to apply these nutrition concepts to the individual. And that ultimately led to where I am today, which is on the scientific advisory board for ZOE. I'm here participating in a part of it because I want to be a part of it, because this is my North Star. This is what I'm trying to do. And so while I have you here, Dr. Li, I just want to say thank you to you for the way that you have supported me in my career, for the phone call that you made that night to me. You changed my life. And I just can't thank you enough. I think that you're a wonderful person, and I'm grateful for you in my life.
Well, thanks so much for those kind words. And it is true that we have sort of bit the apple, so to speak, that says that there's so much more that actually can be done for people. And when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to personalized nutrition, there's such immediacy to this. That's what kind of makes me excited when I see talented physicians do so well, like you have, not only with your career and your book, and all the other the courses that you're doing, all the other activities you're involved with. Um, it means that you are helping things become ignited, and I think that's really a powerful outcome. So thank you very much for your kind words. Thank you for participating in this program. I think that everything that you've discussed and we've been trying to communicate is so important. That's an important message for people to hear.
100%, couldn't agree more. Dr. Li, this was an amazing conversation. Honestly, we could talk for hours. I know we have, and we can continue to. But for the sake of everyone's time, we're going to go ahead and we are wrapping up today's session of the Gut Check series. Thank you, everyone, for coming and joining us. We will be back again tomorrow. I hope that you've enjoyed this. I hope you found this informative and empowering. We'll be back tomorrow at the exact same time. But in the meantime, if you would like to learn more about your biology, about which foods are the right foods for you, about how to optimize your gut health for optimal metabolism, for optimal health throughout your body, head to joinzoe.com and use the discount code GutCheckSeries for 10% off. So we'll see you guys tomorrow, same time. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again for hanging out with us.